I've been playing Magic the Gathering for over 15 years now. And before I go and insult myself any further, I want to ask, has anybody else thought about what an actual game would look like? Like, if we were two planeswalkers duking it out in a magical 1v1, how long would it take IRL? Where would it take place? What would this spell-flinging session actually look like? If I were to dive into the MTG lore behind these cards, would my deck make sense thematically? Don't worry, we're gonna find out together. Hi! Thanks so much for letting me borrow your screen. My name is Oridon. I think this world kinda sucks, so let's build a new one. Magic the Gathering is a very mechanical game by nature. The gameplay follows two basic tenets. By default, you follow the rules of Magic. Unless otherwise stated, you attack once per turn, you play one land each turn, and you draw one card each turn. The second tenet is that every single rule in the game can be broken one way or another. Enchantments that say you draw twice a turn, sorceries that say play several lands each turn, cards that literally allow you to take another turn. Heck, there's literally cards that say you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win, as well as vice versa. So in this arbitrary set of laws designed to be extorted one way or another, how thematic are these decks that we play? What do these battles entail on a lore basis? Let's play a couple of games and find out. I want to preface something before we start. I'll be looking at only one color for now. If you guys end up enjoying this, we'll delve into other colors, then maybe duo color guilds, tricolor groups, and so on. But I'm ready to be verbally assaulted here, so don't hold back. We're going to start with my favorite color in the game, blue. To keep everything consistent, I want to use a rough set of guidelines every time we play. First of all, I'll be playing Brawl, or similarly, Commander with extra steps and only 25 life if you're an IRL player. The format goes as follows. We will have a legendary creature or planeswalker as our commander, which can be played at any time. When designing our decks around a commander, we cannot have cards of any color that doesn't match. This is perfect, since we're choosing a blue commander, we can only use blue cards. Now, I personally will be using the following rules. My commander will be a planeswalker. I find that a lot of lore is centered around the planeswalkers of MTG, so we'll be focusing on that as often as possible. I'm not going to be pushing the meta here. I'm going to try to stay within what each color is thematically trying to accomplish. In our case, blue is very mind-oriented, gaining information in the most efficient way possible while dealing with threats by preventing them. Blue is a very unique type of control. It's not very good with dealing with threats once they're on the board, so we'll be going to very heavy counter magic, allowing us to prevent them from touching down in the first place. With that in mind, let's build a deck. Our commander will be Teferi, Temporal Pilgrim. I'll be running through the lore of each planeswalker and pertinent creature once we enter play, but TLDR, he's a Chronomancer or a Time Mage. We'll be complementing this with 4 other planeswalkers. Ugin, who will act as one of our only means of removal. Narset, a cheap way to prevent additional card draw for our opponents while sculpting the top of our deck. Kasmina will offer us a smidge of protection while offering us some little dudes to put on the board. And of course, we have our bad boy Mind Wizard Jace. 2 of them, Cunning Castaway and Perfected Mind. Both of these are pretty cheap and offer some really good draw potential. Draw, in specific, is very important to us. Teferi's entire shtick here is that he wants to observe draw. He doesn't have any positive abilities. Rather, he gains a loyalty counter whenever we draw a card. He starts with 4 loyalty and has a negative 12 ultimate. Our opponents will return 1 card to their hand and then shuffle the rest back into their deck, not including lands. This isn't always game ending, but it's a very big setback and very expensive for our opponents. Now let's talk win cons. Damage is not our strong suit, so we'll need to be controlling the board and slowing everything down as much as possible. We have some chip damage available to us, some tokens created by our planeswalkers, some of which are boosted whenever we draw cards. Some creatures simulate this effect, such as Duelist of the Mind. As well, we have things like Ominous Seas, which will throw some big hands onto the table if we draw enough cards. Our main creature focus will be fairies. They often have a double value of card advantage and will keep most of our creatures in the air, which is perfect. Just to be as blue player as possible, we'll also include some alternate win tech, the Millennium Calendar. Basically, whenever we untap permanents, we put a counter on it for each one untapped. We can pay 2 and tap it to double its counters. If we get to 1,000, we win. So one of 2 things will happen. We chip our opponents down to nothing while staving the board off, or we literally stall for 1,000 years until a clock decides that the world explodes. Perfect. Standard blue players. I see no realistic reason why I have no friends, honestly. Now we have our deck. I call it Teferis. If you guys want to see this deck as well, I will put a deck list in the description. I will tell you it's not super good, but it is thematic. So if you're into that, it's there. Thematically, we're looking at Teferi calling upon some old tricksters and some enigmatic friends to take on his next opponent. Standard mind magic and chronomancy locked into his tool belt. Let's see where this takes us.
Pause. That was not what was intended, but we're here now. Well, now that we're here, though, now that I'm here on the ground, hold on. Make sure to subscribe. Thanks. This is a terrible idea.
When I started recording this, I really wanted to close out a victory. I felt like it'd be a more interesting interaction, and frankly, I'm glad I waited. And wait, I did. I lost many games before finally closing in on a victory. I won't go into detail on my waffle stomping endeavors, though I must say, some of them were very thematically interesting, in my opinion. So here's our big opponent. Slyn Voda, the Rising Deeps. We are, in fact, fighting a fish. Thrilling. I was interested in the fact that we were fighting another mono blue deck, though it did seem that they were more focused on beef than control, a good contrast. We started off by dropping our 2 islands and playing a Baral, Chief of Compliance, and this is very interesting thematically. In lore, Baral is a large man tasked with apprehending smugglers and mages who were deemed a threat to society. So we're starting off hard with control. With Teferi and ourselves at the helm, we airdropped a Warden of Magic down to start taking control of the area. It makes sense to me. With that, I do want to talk about lands for a second. When I first started considering the thematic ideas behind MTG battles, I had to wonder, what is a land? Like, what are we, as mages, actually doing with these lands? Here's how I'll be considering it from here on out. Our hand of cards are items and creatures that we have some beckoning call, within quote-unquote summoning distance, if you will. Drawing is spending resources to build your connections within a battle. To have a land in our hand means that we've scouted those areas. Playing onto the field means that we've put our tendrils on them, allowing us to tap them for mana. Pun intended. With that in mind, we scouted out and tapped into our 3rd island and called upon Jace, Cunning Castaway. This is a super fun one. In this card, Jace is illustrated without his memory. He just got shunted onto Ixalan, a land of dinosaurs and pirates, his mind freshly destroyed by big dragon elder god Nicol Bolas. I would say that it's safe to say that we, with help from Teferi, found him out at sea and contracted him to aid us against our Moby Dick style advents. For a decent while, our opponent only had 1 creature, Library Larcenist. They often attack even though Baral can easily stop them with no deaths. This is exactly it. This Leviathan has a scout that's going in, stealing artifacts and ideas from us, and walking out with little harm truly done, over and over. Our opponent plays Serpent of the Yawning Depths, our first big predator. This creature is huge and can cause some decent devastation to us if we're not careful, and unfortunately I was tapped out when it happens. So this massive underwater threat was able to sneak in when our guard was down, so we recuperated. It's Fairies time. Using Fairy Slumber Party, we pull their creatures back to their hand as well as Baral for ourselves. 2 fairies are left out on our side of the field. So we contract some fairies to put literally everybody to sleep while we can regain our stamina. Now, if the creature is played again, we'll have information ready to us, and we can keep our counters up and prepared. At this point, Jace has been giving us some decent card information, but he's gotten pretty hurt after summoning an illusion for some defense. Luckily, he's slowly regaining himself while scouting these waters. While our researching pursuits continue, we keep our islands untapped and ready for use while keeping our counter magic at our disposal. With this, we keep control of the tides while sending our fairies in for some chip damage. And this is when something happens. Something that seems small, but in world means so much. We play Omen of the Sea. Now in researching, I really struggled to find what pertinence this had. It's from the Theros Beyond Death, which is based on Greek mythos. I checked the flavor text, and it clicked. My time will come when the rising tide will surge above the tallest mountain. This is why we fight giant sea monsters, why we've contracted Jace sailing the tides. This isn't a declaration, this is a prophecy. Why are we here with Teferi? To prevent the world from flooding. Finally getting a glimpse at our prophecy and scouting out information from it, Teferi makes an appearance. We're now equipped with our big players, the Chronomancer himself and Jace, lost at sea and lost in his mind. Jace is finally able to replicate himself, creating copies to cover even more ground and discover even more waters. This effect immediately empowers Teferi. With them together, we begin to gain the advantage through research. And this is when the craziest thing of all happens. Now, I need to confirm a mechanic really quick. You can't have two planeswalkers of the same type on the field at the same time due to something called the legendary rule. If you have a legendary Jace Balerion and you play a legendary Jace Mind Sculptor, you'll be forced to sacrifice one, given there is only one Jace. But we have a special instance. The copies of Jace Cunning Castaway that were made are not legendary, and this let us play the crux of this story. Jace Perfected Mind. With this new presence, we were able to get some insane card draw and get Teferi up to his ultimate, this new power that Jace has accumulated after revealing himself away from his illusionary clones has given us a win, forcing our sea-born opponents to flee. So what's so crazy? Jace Perfected Mind isn't just Jace. It's Jace after succumbing to the Phyrexians, a race of creatures that believe in steel over flesh, finding perfection in gruesome surgical procedures. They use something called glistening oil to corrupt creatures, and this completed Jace is just that, corrupted. This is so much further compounded by the fact that the Phyrexians are the ones that invaded Teferi's home in lore. Let's go over what this means and what this story just told. We go to sea with Teferi in search of some prophecy that says there will be an end to terrestrial life on this plane. We're caught up on a giant leviathan that seems to be in our way. We drop our warden, Baral, to keep tabs on the area while we scout out new lands and information. Jace is immediately contracted to aid in scouting, given his mind seems to be somewhat pieced together still. When a massive serpent threatens our plans, we call upon fairies to clean up the area using their tricky pixie magic. With this additional delay, we're able to bring our resources back up to full and take control of the area. With extensive search and keeping the fairies on top of the main threat, we finally get our hands on the prophecy, this omen made by the goddess of the sea. The threat seems imminent, so we finally make work of our foe and continue forward, making use of Teferi's excessive power bolstered by Jace's illusionary duplicates. But as we sail on, something becomes apparent. Jace was never lost, Jace had no memory whatsoever. No, rather, he was fully cognizant. He was completed. Phyrexian oil runs through his veins, and while we drive the helm of this ship into the vast sea of lies, Jace smiles to himself. A light whisper from his lips. 4 new Phyrexia. This stylistic form of Magic the Gathering has always piqued my interest, and I'm so happy to finally be able to make something of it. Magic does a great job of building cards that are both very mechanical while telling an amazing story behind the scenes and at the bottom of their cards. So when we ask the question, what does an MTG battle actually look like, we find ourselves with deceitful prophecies and time wizards lost at sea, guided by sleeper agents that once destroyed their home. I'm so astonished by what this created, and I would be so happy to try this again, but with your favorite color next. Tell me, what color would you like to see?
You know, I've actually been playing Magic for a long time, and hold on. I am really happy to have something that I can kind of like do a series on. Really happy to have something I can kind of do a series on. I've always actually been really curious of how Magic works thematically, and I really hope that you enjoyed a video like this. Anyways, go ahead and click the button on the left to check out a video that YouTube picked just for you, handpicked just for you. Or the button on the right if you want to see a playlist of other videos with my face in it. And like, just click the button. Thanks. Mwah.